Thank you.
Great to see you. Thanks for joining us. Okay, I think then we jump in right away. Is that right? Everybody's here. Very warm welcome. I'm glad that so many of you are interested in this really important topic. Let me first introduce my two panelists. I am so happy that I have really two renowned experts here on stage. Here's Marina Cotterfield. I interviewed her a lot for my book lately and for some articles I wrote about the topic. She's a cybersecurity professional with over a decade of hands-on experiences in securing industrial control systems. She managed and executed diverse technical projects around the world across a variety of industrial domains. And you will hear a lot about her work, which is amazing. And then we have Oleg Derivianko. He is the co-founder, chairman of board, and chief vision officer at ISSP, Information Systems Security Partners. I visited them last December. It's a private international cybersecurity company founded in 2008 in Ukraine. They are in Kiev and currently operating globally. ISSP acted as the first responder to and investigator of many of the most sophisticated cyber attacks in history. And the US magazine Wired named them the go-to firm for victims of Ukraine's cyberwar. So very warm welcome. So great to have you here.
And I actually very much remember how Yeva have to walk almost 2 kilometers when her Visa card was declined and she could not buy a ticket for the metro. And I was waiting for her and she walked alone in the darkness in a known city, in a new city alone because she couldn't buy a ticket. I remember that moment.
I always wear comfy shoes. Yeah, so the physical war right now, the Russian aggression war, is accompanied by some cyber attacks, as most of you may have heard of. Most of these cyber attacks are not really sophisticated, but some of them bear the signature of well-known Russian state hackers. For example, was there an attack on the power grid a few weeks ago, and there was this satellite network attack around the beginning of the physical war. And because of these Russian state hackers, who probably belong to a group called Sandworm from the Russian Secret Service, I would like to analyze the attacks of the past of this group, just to understand or to learn more about their capabilities. Because we saw in the past, and this is what Marina will tell you in a second, that they are capable of launching complex cyber-physical operations. Although some of them failed, but they invested an enormous amount of time and energy to plan them. So we analyzed the history of Russian cyber attacks. And some of them were really expensive for the West too, and for some companies in Germany too. And we analyzed their role in the recent kinetic war, and especially important their role in the future and for the West, for our critical infrastructures. So welcome, Marina. Maybe you can start telling us a bit how everything started. So where did these Russian state actors become visible in Ukraine via cyber attacks in the past?
Well, if you talk about attacks on the critical infrastructures especially, and I think this is a very important topic for the whole world, they really became active after the Stuxnet, and I'm sure everybody have heard about the Stuxnet, because Stuxnet was the first attack which basically prompted the other state-sponsored actor, like, well, that's okay to execute such type of the attacks. And Russia started catching up very quickly. So, for example, then, 2 years later, we've discovered the Havocs, which was already a Russian executed attack.
Maybe real quick, a few words about Stuxnet, because I'm not sure everybody knows it. So this was 2010, at least then it was, the people found it. It was a virus that attacked the Iranian centrifuges, the uranium program in Iran. And so it was a really sophisticated and really targeted attack. And it was the first one on industrial control systems, as far as I know.
Physical infrastructure. Yeah. So it was the first attack which was used as a kinetic weapon, to use physical power to destroy physical equipment. Yes, and then, since 2014, when all of the events in Ukraine has started with this, first started with a political, let's say, conflict. So this is where all the massive wave of the attacks in Ukraine have been started. And, you could always see that the long preparation phase, if you remember, then in November and December, they will execute a large volume of attacks. It was in 15, it was in 16. And then Sandworm, it's a very, let's say, powerful group. And while we expected, we had an expectation that maybe they will conduct something similar in 2018, but in 2018 we had another important event in the World Olympic Games. So around autumn they actually left Ukraine mostly. They stopped all the operations and they left for Olympic Games. And of course it was expected that they will be playing a key role in this current physical war in Ukraine, and this is what we will be discussing in this panel, that why it did not happen, because they clearly have the capability, so why are not playing this key or cardinal role in the current physical war.
Maybe real quick, let's talk about the first attacks. Not the first one, but I think the first attacks we in the West really realized, which was I think 2015 and 16, the blackout. So they really caused, of course, physical blackout, physical problems in the real world just from far away. And I remember that you told me that at least the second one was the first totally automated cyber weapon.
So this is actually how I started working together with ISSP, and how I've been knowing Oleg also for over 7 years. So this is the largest cybersecurity company in the world. And after we've seen the first wave of the massive attacks, when you have like more than 10,000 attacks on the governmental sector executed within a short period of time, we started working closer with the government and with the industry, well, guys, you need to defend. You need to monitor, you have to predict, you need to get ready. And this is where I started working also closely together with the SSP, where in 2016 we already have been seeing these attacks, we've been preparing for these attacks, we anticipated this attack. And in 2015 there have been attacks, if you remember, on the Ukrainian power grid, it was the first. And in 2016 it happened the second, and together we conducted, with the SSP leading, we conducted the full incident response on the power grid attack. And it's important to understand that there was no need to execute that attack. It was merely like when you already executed 2,000 attacks, one more does not play a really big role. It didn't have massive impact. It was more or less as annoyance, because, like when we have a normal, comfortable civilian life, anything like if you have electricity switched off for 1 hour, it's like really irritating. So,
but it wasn't it. So I remember that it was only 1 hour, and everybody said, okay, luckily. But then I heard that it was maybe only practicing, and that they could have turned it off for much longer. And then I think it real quick can become deadly, right?
And this is where, so the tools which they've been using in that attack, they did not indicate that they were capable of anything else. It was really realistically like very simple scenario. And it's also, this is what we wanted to discuss also in this session, is that, like preparation for cyber attacks, what makes cyber tools or cyber weapons so unattractive as a weaponry, because the preparation takes so much time. It takes almost a year to conduct a full intrusion, to have a persistent access. So for that specific moment where you may or may not get, because you might be detected while you're trying to get your way into the infrastructure. So depending, like if you look at previous examples, it's a prolonged, like it's multi-months, up to 12 months for that specific moment to have such limited impact. So it's more or less as a practice, and the impact is not that dramatic, and they have not shown, so if you look at the malware which they use, they have not had intention or capability to execute anything serious.
So the next question would be, why are they doing that? But Oleg, I would like to include you. I think you have been in Kiev right now, right back then, and you are in Kiev right now. So do you remember that blackout or other things you realized impacting your daily life and some of these
maybe
attacks?
Non-Peter?
Well, of course, like everything that happens, like that has significant impacts the daily life, but I would just maybe go back a little bit to history of Russian operations globally and their offensive operations globally in cyberspace. And we have to remember that the state actors execute their cyber operations not just using their intelligence units or formal, so to say, military or intelligence units that exist in most of the leading military countries, but also using the proxy hacker groups that also execute those cyber attacks on behalf of the government or just sponsored by that a specific state actor. But going back to the Russian cyber attacks, well, the first kind of perceived known, let's say, recorded state actor attack, specifically a Russian Federation attack, it was 2007 on Estonia, when they just first used that attack in order to demonstrate a cyber power and in order to demonstrate that they would use cyberspace as a battlefield and as a response to something they don't like. At that time, they didn't like that Estonia removed the monument, to the Soviet soldier who was obviously an occupier in Estonia, but the Soviet Union installed it as a monument for the war. So then it was 2008 when Russia invaded, not for the first time, but when Russia launched their military offense in Georgia. And that was for the first time when cyber attacks were actually conducted in parallel with conventional military operation. What differs and how the Ukrainian situation is different, even in 2014 and 15, is that both in Estonia and in Georgia, the Russians predominantly used those attacks that now we consider as pretty straightforward, which is a denial of service or DDoS attacks or distributed denial of service, and DNS hijacking, when they hijack the DNS servers. And what this means, they do different, accomplish different things that they need. In Georgia as well, they predominantly used DDoS and DNS hijacking attacks. But when I go further to, then it was like almost like 7-year break in terms of course they did cyber attacks, but not as big and as publicly known. But when they started to launch their cyber attacks in Ukraine as well. So in 2014, their first attack was during the presidential elections, when the cyber was used just only for the simple purpose to do the defacement of the website of the Central Election Commission in order to replace, to put a picture that the radical candidate was winning. At the end, this radical candidate got less than 1% of votes, but they defaced the website and they used this picture in order to start conducting the propaganda brainwashing campaign in their own country. So, meaning the attack is not always used to do the sabotage or espionage or whatever in the targeted country, but sometimes cyber is used just as a tool to do a different, larger psychological or informational operation and use it in their own domestic country. That's how Russia actually operates, and that's when they started. Of course, they started even before in 2004 and 5, but without cyber instrument, just using the propaganda. But since 2014, they kind of started this massive, really, all-encompassing propaganda campaign in their own country in order to prepare their population for the war against Ukraine. At that time, they already knew they launched the war in the east of Ukraine, and they had to justify that. And of course, they were later preparing for a larger war that they were waging right now. So that's just, but what from a cybersecurity perspective, those cyber attacks that they launched and Ukraine started to conduct against Ukraine since 2014. And as Marina said, there were several waves. The first one was this presidential election. Then there were a huge wave of cyber attacks on power grids and first the media companies in 2015. Then it was several waves, at least 2 in 2016 and so on. And then, of course, the famous NotPetya in 2017. But after 2017, since 2018 to 2020, the number of cyber attacks against Ukraine increased 5 times. It's just a matter that not every cyber attack, hits the headlines in the global media, because sometimes a cyber attack is just relevant for a specific country are not that huge to kind of catch the attention of the global media.
Maybe because you speak about the global media, let's maybe real quick move back to NotPetya. I think this is really the one cyber attack where many of us realized. So what a big impact this can have on Western companies too. Maybe just real quick tell us what this was about and what happened.
There are two remarkable things about NotPetya in my perspective. Of course, the most remarkable thing for the general audience is that it cost something like $11 billion of reported damages, and some global corporations like Maersk or Merck, the Maersk is, as we know, the global shipper and container shipper who holds probably 25% of the global fleet. They suffered probably something around, again, it's reported losses. We estimate that the losses were bigger, sometimes not, but they reported more than $300 million of losses.
Yeah.
Merck reported more than $800 million because the production lines were disrupted. So, but from the cybersecurity perspective, what was remarkable is that the adversaries, the Russian state actor groups, they actually used the tools that they used since 2014 till 2016 and a little bit of 2017, but they use different tools, but they use them separately. And in NotPetya, they basically didn't use any new tools. They just used all the previous tools, but they combined and automated them. And the level of automation was actually the reason. And the level of automation was actually the reason for this huge impact. And of course, that because nobody expected. But also remember that before the NotPetya culmination, and we always have to emphasize that every time when the cyber attack hits the news, it means it's a culmination phase. As Marina said as well, the attack, even from the intrusion until culmination, typically takes 6 to 9 months. And there are also time before intrusion to prepare the attack, to do the reconnaissance, to prepare the tools, and so on. But when this culmination happened on NotPetya, the level of automation actually created this impact. But before that, there were two big ransomware attacks. If you remember, there was a WannaCry attack and there was a Xdata attack. WannaCry was clearly attributed to
North Korea, right? That's
exactly. But my question, but again, I'm still questioning that, because I don't know where North Korea all of a sudden would get these capabilities to conduct such a maybe Russia even used North Korea as a proxy. A state actor can use other other states as proxies, not just criminal groups as proxies. But the thing, actually, this sequence of WannaCry, then Xdata, and then NotPetya. So first ransomware attack, second ransomware attack, and then the third attack that also looked like a ransomware, but was not a ransomware. So it was an obfuscation even in the attack itself. They wanted to deceive and kind of put the defenses into the wrong direction, so that everyone would think, oh, it was a ransomware, so we could probably recover in a kind of a traditional manner, just paying the ransom, whereas it was not even planned, right? So
let's real quick make a quick move to the role NotPetya had for the years after. So Marina, you told me that NotPetya, although it was devastating, helped the world and Ukraine to prepare for the next cyber attacks. And you said it's not possible anymore to do for Russian state hackers to do attacks like that. So why is that the case, and what are they doing instead?
Yeah, and this is what Oleg say very smartly, that, like when we see these three ransomware attacks going one after another, there is a reason for that, because the attacker understands. So cyber weapons, they are one-time use weapons. So once you showed the capability, the defenders have immediately opportunity to defend. So if you will not size the opportunity, so this is what NotPetya was using, the same SMB propagation vector. So if they would not use that momentum right away, they would lose it forever. And since that, it will be extremely difficult. So every country analyze their supply chain opportunities, like which another software can be used to unleash such attacks. People introduce segmentation. So executing this large-scale attack right now will be almost impossible, and certainly also not in Ukraine. But we could see, because especially so non-petty had also like impact, also it propagated from Ukraine globally. So that would not be possible anymore. And together with Oleg, we also basically, I work for his company. Like in December, I've been executing, like I spent the whole month in Ukraine, and like I've been going to our previous customers, and the way how they advanced since then, you know, like all of those attacks were not for nothing. Ukraine has improved the defenses and detection capability significantly. So those attacks would not be possible anymore. And this is why we don't see this large scale. I mean, we have a volume, but the impact and effect of those attacks in Ukraine are not as before. And this is why one of the, for example, there was maybe like attack on the critical infrastructure. There have been attempts during the war, and it was detected timely. So definitely, you know, like using cyber weapons, yeah, you have to really size the opportunity to use them, because it's expensive. So it's expensive for the defenders. Yes, Maersk has lost 300 million, but for the attackers to develop those capability, it takes a lot. It's also cost a lot, and then you're just losing that attack scenario. You can't use it anymore. So cyber war is not cheap, actually.
Since our time is running, sadly, it's already over. I have one important question, of course, for the people here in Germany. So I have heard from several experts that our critical infrastructures, that attackers are already spying on our critical infrastructures. And so, of course, the question for us is how dangerous is it? Is a Russian Secret Service, for example, already waiting in our whatever chemical plants and will cause explosions? Just if Putin wants that, or how dangerous is that? How worried do we have to be, and what can we do about that?
Well, I guess so. You see, like there is of course a big difference between cyber, like being used in the civilian life, like in a normal time, and during the war. So what has an unpleasant impact in the civilian life is really not a big impact in the times of war. But so Europe like has been issuing advisories that Russia is trying to establish persistent foothold in the critical infrastructures. For example, also in Germany since 2018. Yes, so cyber attackers every day they scan internet and look for the potential target. If there is something vulnerable, they take it over, they exploit it, they try to have a foothold on it. Whether they will be able to use it, whether they will ever have a capability and they will be able to achieve effect on it so that it will be meaningful impact, that is a big question, because I'm specializing really on large-scale operations, like how to cause a significant impact. And causing that impact with a reliably successful outcome is extremely difficult and takes enormous amount of effort and time. So we can be worried that the attackers will be trying to develop such capabilities, probably practice in these infrastructures, but something what can be seen as a large-scale war, probably not.
Real quick, as a last question to both of you, and maybe Oleg, you start. So, is the West prepared for that? So, is our defense is that good enough for these kind of attackers?
Yeah. It's like you would, that's a great question, but, and I think it really relates to the previous one. We basically, my kind of advice would be, first, you have to stay calm and keep peace of mind, because otherwise it's just impossible to live in the modern world if you would think about all the threats that we're facing. But on the other hand, in cybersecurity profession, we all know that cybersecurity is not a result, just as a regular security. It's a process. So you may be prepared at this given moment, and the next moment you may be not prepared at all, because the adversaries may have discovered some zero-day vulnerabilities, so vulnerabilities that were not known before, and found the way how to exploit them. Meaning that you have basically cybersecurity, nobody understands it, but cybersecurity is a human business. Technology is just helping to do the job, and helping the analysts, helping the threat detectors, threat hunters, the incident responders, engineers who do the configuration, who install the systems and maintain them. So, it's intensively labor. Kind of intensive, sorry for this tautology, business. So you need people, you need trained people, and people need to go and do their job, just like a regular police with all the equipment, with all the cameras installed. If you would not have police on the street, you would not have security on the street. And you don't know when the next incident may happen. You have to be prepared every time. And that's why the question is, yes, some organization can be better prepared at this specific moment of time. Some of them can be less prepared, and another moment of time could be vice versa. So it's basically a never-ending story, and of course it's a balance between how much you can invest into your security versus invest in business development, product development, in your people, and so on. It's really a game of a business risk, assessing the risk, understanding the risk, and then taking the measures in order to mitigate the risks as much as you can.
Thanks a lot, Oleg. Maybe one last sentence, because the time is over and people are already waving on me to stop it. It's Marina. One last sentence from you.
Well, the last sentence, since we are talking about cyber war, it's really like, especially after this kinetic war, the world will be studying what cyber operations what's happening, and we will really start dividing cyber operations during peaceful times, military times. The regulations, the law will change because the impacts are different. That's it. So I think there will be a lot of regulations coming after this war.
Thank you so much. So cybersecurity is a process, and we will see which regulations are coming. Thank you so much, Oleg and Marina, for being here. Thank you all for being here.
Thanks, everybody. And stand with Ukraine. Cheers.